it is 4:30. It's time to start. So if you'd all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please remain standing for a moment of silence.
Take a moment to remember the 7 police officers and 7 firefighters that have passed since our last board meeting in the line of duty. Additionally, we'd like to take a moment for Phoenix firefighter Justin Doherty, who was also an active Army reservist and was passed away while performing those functions.
Thank you. Please have a seat. That's okay. Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Can everybody hear me okay in the back there? Okay. Hopefully it's on. We have quite an evening tonight, and we're going to start off with our some badge pinning. Chief, I believe you're first up.
I am. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So tonight is a very exciting night. We have 3 promotions. We have 3 great folks that we're going to move from their current rank to the next one up. So I'll start with the captain promotion. It's a pretty exciting time taking an engineer to the captain. It's really a pretty big deal. While the rank of engineer is a critical role in our organization, that captain role is really the first role supervisor. The captain's a person who's in charge of their crew, in charge of the scene, in charge of the fire engine, and really watches out for the safety of their crew. They truly set the pace for the leadership and the integrity of the folks that are working in their crew. The fire service promotion process works on the bugle. So while none of you can probably see it, here are the 2 bugles that we'll be giving to Donnie Arwan this afternoon. So the bugle is actually a trumpet, and the trumpet was used on the fire ground long before radios existed. It was with that bugle or trumpet that leaders would communicate with people working on the fire ground. The captain is traditionally 2 bugles side by side that illustrates the rank of captain. Being able to promote another captain here at Sedona Fire District is truly an honor. So before us today, come on up here, Donnie. We'll put you right over here, and you can smile at all the people so they want to see you, not show them your good side. So coming before us today is Donnie Arwine. He served, before he came to Sedona Fire District, he served the U.S. Army from 1996 as a combat engineer and was honorably discharged in 1999. In September 2000, firefighter Arwine came to Sedona Fire District as a firefighter EMT. He was a paramedic by 2003 and was an engineer in 2007. He earned his associate degree in fire science in 2012 and became an engine boss in 2014. You can tell by Captain Arwine's aggressive approach to everything. He's a hard charger and committed to the community of Sedona Fire District, and we're proud of him. I think it's critical to share that Captain Arwine was also an Eagle Scout who received multiple medals for service while serving in the Army, including Accommodation Achievement and Good Conduct medals and the Expert Marksmanship qualification and an Air Assault badge, or badges maybe. Looking over Captain Arwine's file, I found it fitting that after a rescue in 2010, there were a couple kids. You remember this one? A couple kids that needed some support and help. They maybe took their parents or something to the hospital, needed some help. And so Donnie and his crew took folks back, and they cooked up breakfast, bacon and pancakes for the kids to make sure that they were safe until they got some guardians to come take care of them. And so he was recognized for that hard work and going above and beyond. Also was recognized for his work at the slide fire. And I can tell you, whenever I walk in the station, Donnie's always one of the first people to come up and say, "Hey, how's it going? What's happening?" Always upbeat and smiling, as you see him right now, and he's engaged in whatever's on command. He does it. It's amazing, and he's always engaged with whatever he's doing. So with that, I'm going to make Engineer Arwine into Captain Arwine. Are you ready? All right. Raise your right hand. Repeat after me. I state your name.
I, Don Arwine,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution and laws of the state of Arizona,
and the Constitution and laws of the state of Arizona.
and I will bear faith and allegiance to the same
I will bear faith and allegiance to the same.
and defend them against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
I will defend them against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
And I will faithfully and impartially discharge the duties
I will faithfully and impartially discharge the duties
of the office of Captain
of the office of captain
of the Sedona Fire District
of the Sedona Fire District
according to the best of my ability,
according to the best of my ability,
so help me God.
so help me God.
With that, I'd like to have Tish Narwine come up. Tish is no stranger to us. She works in the hospital, and so we're close with Tish, and also served in the military as well. So here's his badge. Be careful with that. All comes back right now.
Do it. Do it.
She's a nurse, she's a PA, so she draws blood, she can fix it. Donnie, here's your bugles you get to wear proudly, and represent us well, do good in the community, and thank you again for all you do for us at the Fire District. Everyone, Captain Arnold.
Thank you very much.
Congratulations.
Well done.
Thank you.
Congratulations, Cap.
And the fun is not over. So with this promotion here and some retirements, which we'll talk about shortly, we've got 2 engineer promotions occurring tonight. So the promotion to engineer is also a very important step. Engineers are responsible for driving the engines, and while this position does not have any formal supervisory responsibilities, they really are the go-to person on the bay floor for our firefighters around the station. Sometimes it's the intermediate steps. You don't have to go hang out at the captain's office, and so that's a good place to be. It really is a huge responsibility. The position has to know how to drive those large fire trucks, get water out of the hoses when operating at a fire, as well as provide many safety functions. Getting to the scene of the incident is one of our most dangerous times for the fire service. Seeing people make this first step in a promotion they've worked very hard to get to is really exciting for me. Oh, someone wrote this and I didn't write this part. I just got, sorry. My speechwriter said, do you remember when you were in high school and you asked, oh, I wrote this actually, I'm sorry, out of context. Remember in high school when, you guys remember in high school and you said, hey, like I'll never need that math anywhere. Why am I learning this? Engineers really do need that math. And so you can answer that question with, I could be an engineer for the fire department. That is what that algebra comes in handy for. So that's good stuff. So we got 2 good folks at algebra right now. We've got first one up here. I'd like to call up Keith Christofferson. Please come up. So before coming to Sedona Fire District, Keith Christofferson worked for the Regional Fire and Rescue Department in Casa Grande. His brother Tony is also a fire captain in Wickenburg. But in 2005, we were excited to bring Keith as a reserve firefighter EMT to Sedona Fire District. By January 2007, we hired him full-time. And by the end of 2011, he achieved his paramedic status. He has served as an acting engineer, much of which was the time for Engineer Arwine, actually, ironically. So he's following good footsteps. Engineer Christofferson has an associate's degree in fire science, has an incident safety officer, and in 2017 completed his squad boss qualifications in the wildland firefighting. Preparing for today, I found out that Keith has 4 unit citations. That's pretty impressive. 2007 for work on Ambulance 512, the unit that we had staffed up at that time. 2010 for his work on the EMS committee. 2012 for the Village of Oak Creek, a working fire they took great action on and made a huge impact. And in 2014 for the slide fire. He was also awarded the Customer Service Award in 2015. As you can tell, he's pretty dedicated and does great work. I have two distinct things when I think about Keith. It's his work ethic and his interest in people. When I walk around the stations and interact with Keith, he's always asking how I'm doing, much like Donnie, as he followed in his footsteps. So we know he truly cares about how things are going for me and how things are happening in the district. And it's also nice to know that he's got a sincere interest in everything that's going on. To further illustrate his passion for people is when he takes a week off every year from his job to work at Camp Courage and work with all the children that are at the camp for children who've been suffered a burn injury. He has a critical role there. He makes sure that all the kids have all the logistical things they need, like water and tie-dyed and all supplies and all that type of stuff, as I understand it. And he wasn't able to make it this year, right? Because you had a baby, is that correct? Yeah, they big, huge hole to fill, trying to fill in your spot. But you'll be back next year, I assume? Hopefully?
Hopefully.
Yeah? All right. Well, I know they miss you, so it says a lot about you. And I also got to learn a little bit about Keith's character when Keith and his wife Misty had a beautiful baby baby boy named Cole, who's back there maybe making a little bit of racket. You're talking about me, people. My wife and I got to visit Misty and Cole in the hospital, and so there's something to be said when you see a new mom and dad proudly showing off their first child, and just how excited they've been. A couple text messages checking in how things are going, what's up, and always quick to get back to me and just let me know how things are going. So it's just a cool thing for the connection and knowing what we want to do. So with that, I'd like to swear, or I got to bring one person up. Stand by. We got one more to go. How about John King? I see him in the back of the room. Let's bring Jonathan King up here. Engineer King's a very dedicated and passionate employee. He comes to Sedona Fire District after serving in the U.S. Army as a combat infantryman, serving from 2003 till being honorably discharged in 2007. He's proudly serving our country overseas. While in the Army, Jonathan was a natural leader, earning his Expert Infantry Badge, the Army Good Conduct, and the Commendation Medals. He also received the Army Achievement Medal and the Navy Unit Commendation Medal. SFD hired him in 2010 as a firefighter EMT. He quickly finished up his associate's degree a few months later, and by 2013 he was a certified paramedic. Jonathan has continued his education and received his bachelor's degree in NAU in emergency management, graduating cum laude in 2015. We've recognized Jonathan in a few ways over his career. In 2012, he received the Customer Service Award for going above and beyond on a canine rescue unit. That was a group that had they're hiking, and their dog had passed. Is that correct? And Jonathan King and actually Ed Mazulis, I believe, was there, and I forget who else was there, but those two I know were there, and they actually helped carry a dog off a trail for a significant distance to help make that family's bad day just a little bit easier on them, and so they went above and beyond the call of duty, and that's the citation there. 2014 citation for the slide fire. He was named Firefighter of the Year and also got a unit citation both in 2017 for the amazing work he's done to help bring Arbinger, some leadership training and philosophy that helps Sedona Fire District culture to be successful. Jonathan's one of our trainers, as I said, and when you go through his class, you can certainly appreciate his passion and dedication to leadership. The other thing I got to tell you about Jonathan is his commitment to EMS. He works on our EMS committee. He reviews all of our cardiac arrest reports. This afternoon, you're going to hear a little bit from our EMS chief about some of those cardiac responses, but every cardiac arrest we have, John King goes through and looks at the quality of the CPR, the quality of the medicine administration, and all the other factors that go into it, and look at how we could have done things better, even just that little incremental piece making a difference. And he provides that report to all of our personnel and works through some pretty great stuff to make us better in any chance we can. So with that, I'm going to swear you two in. Are you ready? Okay. You saw how we did it, right? Yeah. Raise your right hand. I state your name.
I, Jonathan King,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution and laws of the state of Arizona,
and the Constitution and laws of the state of Arizona,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same
and I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same,
and defend them against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
and defend them against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
and that I will faithfully and impartially discharge the duties
I will faithfully and impartially discharge the duties
of the office of engineer
of the office of engineer
of the Sedona Fire District
of the Sedona Fire District
according to the best of my ability,
according to the best of my ability,
so help me God.
so help me God.
With that, I'm going to call up Misty, and I have Jonathan's brother Mike and father William,
Yep.
or Bill. Come on up. Is that just Bill today?
Yeah.
Okay. We got Bill here. We got Misty over here. I won't get those two confused. Not Misty, not too hard. All right. Get Cole up here real quick. Come on, Cole. Come up. There you go. Congratulations. Thank you. Engineers, welcome.
Nice job. Congratulations.
Yeah.
Congratulations. Get the wet stuff on the hot stuff, bud.
All done with that, Chief?
Got a lot of talking parts there already. I'm almost out for the day.
Okay. Well,
Nah.
I'll tell you what, that concludes the pinning of for the badge ceremony. We'll take a few minutes for the families if you want to take some more pictures out there, or you're welcome to stay for the balance of the meeting. It's pretty dry stuff, so we'll give you a few minutes and then we'll reconvene in just a few minutes. Thank you.
Somebody fix the car. It's only 7 minutes back.
Okay, well, let's get back on track here. Thank you, Chief, for the pinning ceremony. It was well deserved of those three members. Regular business meeting. John, anybody from the public?
I have not received any requests to address the board.
Okay, great. Next up would be the consent agenda. We've got 5 items on there. Anybody like to make a motion to accept the consent agenda?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion that we accept the consent agenda for Tuesday, July 17th.
Items
I-
1
I
through
wanted
5.
to, excuse me,
Well, let me get a second and then
Sure.
we'll go to discussion.
okay,
Second it, okay, discussion?
there. So, the number 5 on it, I thought it would be useful just because of the amount. And also, I think it's helpful for our public to understand what happens to our apparatus from time to time, and why the expenditures are what they are. So it'd be great to have an explanation of number 5, which is a purchase order for H&E Equipment Services for repairs and inspections of truck 511.
Okay, Chief, would you like to expand on that, or?
Yeah, and do we want to pull that from the agenda, Mr. Legal Counsel, or do
Yep.
we answer her questions and do it that way?
Yeah, you gotta remove it from the
Okay,
consent agenda.
okay, so the motion to accept 1 through 5 be amended to accept 1 through 4 and pull item number 5. And there's a second needed for that? Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes, so could I have a second to that? Okay. Any further discussion on that? All in favor? Aye. Okay. With that said, should we discuss number 5 now or wait till it comes up on the agenda?
No, it's
Okay.
on the agenda. It's not an
There
agenda.
it is on there, okay, then let's go ahead and discuss that now. Item number 5.
Okay, board, I'll jump in. This was Chief Coyles, but he's not here right now. So, truck 511 needed to go for repairs. It had some mechanical issues. We sent it in for service, and here he is right now. So I will actually pause and let him handle this. He prepared it, and I'm happy to fill in where he doesn't, but he's got the details on it. Truck 511, they pulled that, and they'd like to talk about the repairs, and maybe Board Member Clerk Cooperman can maybe explain what you'd like to hear. So, Chief.
Yes, yes, Chief Coyle. I asked for this to be pulled because I think it's helpful for the public to learn more about what goes on with our apparatuses and why we have an $18,000 expenditure.
It's in that flat spot.
Yes, ma'am. So, relative to this specific repair, there's a couple different items with the truck that have been ongoing for some time, including the packing on the pump, where basically keeps it from leaking water out of it. That it caused us to have to leave the truck without water in it while it was sitting here because it would run out on the floor. So, that affected our ability to respond quickly with a full tank of water if we needed to. Matter of fact, they were coming back from an incident in assisting Camp Verde and came across a vehicle fire and didn't have water in it to be able to put it out. So, that was one of the things that pushed getting these repairs done at the top of the list. The other thing is that one of the most costly part of the repairs is the brakes on it. And on this particular piece of equipment, you have to remove the whole wheel hub assembly, and the brake drums weigh about 250 pounds. So, one of the trade-offs when we have a fleet maintenance division that only has one person is that some of those items such as that, it's not possible for him to do those himself. On that bill, you also see 2 inspections. One of them is the DOT inspection on the piece of equipment, on basically the chassis of the engine, which is a very thorough inspection. The other one is on the ladder itself. And while the ladder inspection was done 6 months ago, there's some problems with the rams bleeding off the cylinders that elevate the aerial ladder, or the aerial the aerial ladder, the aerial bucket. And so those things were repaired or were checked again to ensure that they're operating properly. Because from a risk management perspective, there's been some pretty catastrophic failures when buckets have dropped, and even when they didn't knock people out of them, if they spring like that, they kind of flicked people out of them. So those are the repairs. It certainly is costly to have a piece of equipment like that and to maintain it, but I feel confident those are in line with what was appropriate given the issues that needed to be addressed.
And I
So
think
hopefully that helps.
Furthermore, this is the ladder truck, so it doesn't fit into our apparatus bays and close the door, so there's a security issue. So we can do repairs on the ladder truck when it's an in and out type repair, but when it's going to be a lengthy repair, we don't have the space to even make those repairs either in our maintenance facility. The ladder truck doesn't fit, so we would have a truck sticking halfway out the door. So this is routine maintenance. Packing on pumps go bad, they need to be replaced. It's a technical issue. It's sometimes just easier to have those folks do it. And as Chief Coyle mentioned, with one person, we used to have 2 people in maintenance. We have 1 person in maintenance now. And so the ease to outsource this item and get all the technical pieces done and the logistical issues that we have, and then keep fixing all the other trucks and doing the other things we have, it just makes sense. I don't know if we've answered your question effectively, but that.
Oh, absolutely, yes, and thank you for that explanation. Sometimes we've heard criticisms about actually having a ladder truck, and yet because sometimes the criticism is said that we don't have 2-story homes. At least that's what I've seen in print. And yet that ladder truck becomes very important with fires as recently as the one I know that was, I believe, near my home, where a tree almost caught on fire. And when a tree catches on fire, the ladder truck becomes very, very useful because the trees are pretty tall where I live.
Yeah, I'm not sure that the ladder truck responded to the fire in your neighborhood, actually, so I can't.
I saw it pull away.
Okay,
But,
so it was there. I'm not sure if it operated. It may have been there. I'm not sure that it operated. I'm not sure. I wasn't there that evening, so I
Sure.
can't specifically speak to the operations there, but I can tell you that the fire department operations and the use of a ladder truck are hand in hand, part and parcel. They're part of our insurance rating, and there's just multiple reasons why we use it for single-family homes, single-story homes, 2-story homes, commercial buildings, et cetera, et cetera. It's just what we did. I mean, if you watched the news last week, there was a big rainstorm, much like we had yesterday, downtown Phoenix in a brand new Safeway store, and the Safeway roof collapsed, which then hit a gas line, which then also broke the sprinkler line, which then caught and burned down a Safeway store at 6:30 in the metropolitan Phoenix. Had 5 ladder trucks trying to put that fire out. And again, that's worst case scenario in some people's minds, but that's the reality, the risk we have on numerous occasions. And we don't have 5 ladder trucks running. We have R1, and there's a couple other in Camp Verde and Cottonwood that are have less capabilities than ours do. So it's a mandatory tool in my mind, and so maintaining it and going for the time where Chief Coyle talked about not having the water in a ladder truck. A ladder truck typically is not a first in firefighting. It's really a supplemental a piece of equipment. So I wouldn't want anyone to think that we were operating without water and not providing what would be considered to be appropriate firefighting tactics. It was a temporary situation because the packing needed to be replaced, and in that type of the truck only holds a couple hundred gallons of water anyway. So it's not a fire engine that we're using for first out attack. If we had that without water, that would be a different story. So they're different animals.
Chief, I have just a couple follow-up questions on that. So the truck is going to be out of the area for repair?
Well, it's down in Phoenix for the repairs.
It's in
It's in
for how
Phoenix.
long are they projecting?
The estimate, once it was approved to make the, to purchase the equipment, it was 1 to 2 weeks.
1 to 2 weeks?
Yes.
And what do we have in reserve in its place while it's out? Because essentially, we are out of a truck for that period of time.
That's correct. So on our run cards, it will pull those apparatus from the adjacent districts. So from Camp Verde. or
Cottonwood. Right now, if we had a fire, I think the run card would be, at least the most here in West Sedona, would definitely be Cottonwood. If it's out in the village, it would make it the Camp Verde and ladder truck, depending on where the CAD decides is the best unit.
And our response time from those two communities to here, if we have an incident, would be
More delayed certainly than it would be when our ladders
30
here.
minutes?
Yeah,
Yeah, I
mean,
think that's a fair
it's
estimate.
pushing 30. I mean,
Yeah.
I can tell you it took 27 minutes to get the ladder truck from this station out to the village of Oak Creek. The incident unit citation that we gave to Jonathan King, I think I gave it to, that was in the village of Oak Creek off Jacks Canyon Road, and it was 27 minutes for them to get there with no stops, with no, nothing to get from within their own district. So I gotta imagine it's,
I had sweaty hands just thinking about that.
Oh, yeah, and
Without a
that-
key piece of equipment, so.
yep.
Especially since ours has so much utility, because the bucket will go below parallel. There's ways to use it in other applications. Our homes are located on slopes that,
Certainly yesterday when we had we had a lot of flooding going on, not widespread, considerable flooding, but we had lots of water running across the roads and things like that. We had the low water crossing at Sunset closed, so had someone got in there, that ladder truck could be very well suited for a rescue of that nature. So not having it, that's the nature of the beast. We can't have a backup truck. That
Right.
isn't what we're asking. Maybe you're asking for that. I don't think you were, but let me
No, I'm
clarify.
just trying to make the point that we are without a key piece of equipment, albeit seldom used, and now we've got a 30-minute response time at best if we do need it.
Correct.
So we're kind of between a rock and a hard spot right now.
It's not ideal.
Okay. With that said, any more discussion? Okay, then I'll need a motion to approve number 5.
I move to approve purchase order 11385 for $18,717.24 to H&E Equipment Services LLC for the repairs needed for truck 511.
Do I have a second? Second. Second. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passed. Thank you for that explanation. Okay, next up, financial report and updates from our finance director this evening, Melissa Tomlinson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Okay. So for the month of June, can you guys hear me okay? For the month of June, our tax revenue was $209,879. We were under budget by $256,255, and that's just due to timing. We're actually up year to date, so our tax collections were a little bit behind where they were this time last year for the month of June, but year to date we're fine. Non-tax revenue is $259,711, which is over budget by $70,843. We're running over budget on wildland and ambulance for the month. Personnel expenses are $1,034,624. We're over budget by $92,468. We're running over budget on wildland wages for the month. Vehicles and equipment were $119,403, which are over budget by $30,013. We are under budget year to date, but we're over budget for this month because of some PP&E purchases. Utilities and communications are $34,579, which is over budget slightly at $9,266. Managerial expenses were $75,769, which are under budget by $30,818. And capital and contingency was $79,105, which is under budget by $59,388. And we only used capital for the month. We didn't go into our contingency at all. So year to date, our total revenue is $16,674,490, which is over budget by $384,741. Majority of that, thank you. Majority of that is due to non-tax revenue. Tax revenue makes up about $13,000 of that positive variance, and the remainder is due to wildland fires and ambulance fire, revenue. Total expenses are $15,067,303, which is under budget by $1.9 million. And the bulk of that variance is coming from personnel expenses being under budget. They continue to trend under budget, and capital and contingency, which is also running under budget. Overall, all of our expenses are running under budget for the year. Vehicles and equipment were $715,385, which is under budget by $352,918. Utilities and communications were $255,144, which is under budget by $20,357. Managerial $1,074,754, under budget by $198,643, and capital and contingency is $1,113,703, which is under budget by $541,000. So year-to-date expenses as a percentage of budget. So we actually ended the year only spending 82% of our budget. The remaining portion is due to being under budget on personnel expenses as well as capital and contingency. We're also under on all the other categories, but those make up the majority of that 18% that's remaining. Percentage of expenses year-to-date. Personnel is 79% of our overall expenditures, which has been in line with what it has been, and same as it was last month. Operations follow at 8%, capital and contingency at 7%, and then managerial make up 6% of our overall expenditures. When we look at our year-over-year cash position, our cash ended at $6,722,424. Which is ahead of where we were last year. We were at $5,516,445, so about $1.2 million. That's largely due to the positive variances that we had for this budget year, which were really driven by the wildland season that we had. Our other assets are $6,160,749, which are down compared to this time last year. And our total liabilities are $3,658,528, which are also down this time compared to this time last year. And the reason those are down are primarily because the prior year balances include audit adjustments that happen at year end, and we haven't yet done those audit adjustments for this month of June, for this fiscal year. Can I answer any questions? Yes, sir.
I didn't catch the reason why the tax levy is so much below what is budgeted.
So for the month, we were $256 below budget, but actually year to date, we're $13,000 ahead of what we had budgeted. So it's really timing of collections. And when we set our budget by month, we kind of look at a 3-year average of what our historical collections have been for that month, but it does vary from year to year for a variety of reasons. And so this year, we got more of our tax collections earlier in the year compared to what we usually do.
Thank you.
Most
Any
of
other
the,
questions?
you mentioned 82% of our budget is what we actually use of last year's budget.
Correct.
And the remaining 18% went,
The other remaining 18% will be rolled into the capital reserve fund, or it'll just be a reserve fund for expenditures that may come up. It's some of those revenues like wildland are a little bit hard to pin down, but we do make money on them, albeit a small portion, but it does help to kind of fund some of those reserves for future capital purchases, which is nice.
You can't depend on those, though.
No, you can't depend on those, and that's why we budget very conservatively for those.
okay. Any other questions? Okay, I'll need a motion to approve the June 2018 finance report.
I'll move to approve June 2018 finance report.
Okay. Have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And the finance report for June is approved.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next item up on the agenda is staff items. Chief, I believe that's all you.
Board, you've seen in your report the response analysis, incident summary response times. You can see we're up about, overall, I think it's 70 so calls from this point last year. So if we track half the year here, and the second half will be about 140, 150 calls more than last year. So that's, impacts our, a lot of things. You can look at the different breakdown of all the different calls. Well, we had a significant number of rescues, 21 in the month of June. When you look at the tracking, we're about 13 more than last year, which percentage-wise is a fairly significant. From 54 to 67 is 13. So it's it's a pretty good jump percentage-wise. So keeping us pretty busy there. We certainly realized, this is the month of June, which at the end of the month here, we had that alternate response vehicle in place. Remember we talked about that? I believe at some point in time talking, because of wildland risk, we put an extra unit up, and that helped with some response times. It helped with some crew resource management issues when we had some of those significant rescue calls or backcountry rescues. Everything else is tracking as you would kind of suspect and humming right along. It appears we're probably averaging what looks to be about 350, 360 calls a month. So keeps us busy. You look at there, looking at that 90th percentile, we're continuing to work and get that data set honed down, as we mentioned last month, as well as the average response times as we go there. Clerk Cooperman had sent me information earlier today asking, looks like the numbers have changed, and so as staff, we took at last month, we said we're doing some work. We've been working with Fire Stats, which is the third-party vendor, different than Firehouse, which is where our records management system is stored, and essentially the change is we were using Firehouse for the average response time and Fire Stats for the 90th percentile times. And so we decided after last month, look at that with the different databases and different, so we firmed that up a little bit, and we're using the same database. So we have the same data we're looking at, criteria and filtering. And so with that, I'll turn over to Chief Coyle if he's got anything else he wants to add to that.
I do think it kind of warrants a little bit of an explanation, because one of the primary reasons that those numbers were coming out different, or there's a couple of them that we've identified so far, but important that as we're looking through these numbers, the intent behind here is to process the information so that we can make better decisions moving forward, and we can identify where there's trends that we can correct. And honestly, I don't feel confident yet that we can do that, because there's still been some variability in the numbers. I'll give you a couple of the causes that we've identified so far. When there's been a correction made to call times and then it's been re-imported into Firehouse, it shows up as a duplicate record. So when you query the numbers one way as an aggregate total, those duplicate records aren't counted twice. But when you break them out by different fields, say the reason that it was re-entered is it was a call that was started out as a special duty assignment, then ended up being a fire call, then each one of them shows that number for there. So whether that's a good number or a bad number as far as response time, it's reflected twice in the subcategories, but only once in the aggregate total. The other thing is that Firehouse, if there was either because of the way that the CAD dumps, or I think we've kind of figured out that's probably the likely cause of the error. There's a call number missing from the time that 911 receives the call to the time it's dispatched, to the time the units respond, to the time they're on scene, to the time they clear the call. If any of those are missing, then what Firehouse does is, depending on when you pull the numbers, the amount of time that's passed from that last, or from when the call originated until the time you pull it, is the number that it uses. So it has this, it could be, days. Whereas Fire Stats, what it does, if there's a missing number, there's usually two ways you do it: is you either remove the record, or you take the median, the average of all the other numbers in that column, and you input that for any missing data. And Fire Stats does it the latter way. So we're just trying to continue to drill those down. And there's also a difference between what was considered an urgent versus a non-urgent call, and whether it had to do with the dispatch code or whether it was the disposition code. So it's I was just talking to Brian Espial before this as well, because he's been really helpful in trying to figure out all those different nuanced ways. Suffice to say that when we get it done, we'll have some good documentation and the methodology behind how we do it. And once we've corrected the errors, we should be able to give you guys a consistent look every month as to where those numbers are and how they're trending.
I think what's...
Yeah, well, Chief Coyle and Chief Kazian, what struck me was that by doing this different way of gathering information, gathering data, that we moved our response times up in some cases, a minute. And instead of in the 6-minute range, which I might digress here for a minute. You know, I've been criticized for being proud of our 6-minute response time. I've been criticized by people publicly and in the paper. And yet, that's a really good response time. I think what people who've been criticizing me personally on is that they don't realize that the 6-minute response time includes both the processing time and the turnout time, and then the time from the vehicle to the location. And somehow the people criticizing me think that it should be 4 minutes for all of that, and of course that's a little impossible, and also it's not national standards to have it be 4 minutes for the entire processing and turnout and arriving. However, seeing that our response times have gone up with this new way of collecting data, does that concern you?
No, it doesn't concern me because I'm not certain what the right numbers are. And then once we look at that, I think by response time, we talk about our total reflex time from what you just said. So, you know, I can tell you that working with the dispatch center, they've been very transparent about what their part of that reflex time is and what steps they're taking to try to improve that. Once we get these turnout times, I already have the email drafted. I'm just waiting to get some good numbers on that. Then the idea is to put that information out in front of the crews on a monthly basis, so that they can look at those and then have them come to me and say, hey, this is what we need to do to get out the door more quickly. This is what's going on. And when it comes to travel times, once we get those two other things drilled down, then we can have an intelligent conversation about the travel times. And it's easy, you know, it's statistics, right? You could bias them and say that, hey, this is, you know, pull these out and say that this is bad or this is good. And especially with some of the stations that don't run us information on calls, is you get a sample that isn't representative of the, it's not, you know, it's just the statistical variability within the sample is such that it may be a little bit better one month and it may be a little bit worse one month. And if we react to those things, if we were to react to those things, we may make a change that doesn't have a positive impact. So, you know, right now what we're looking at is the best way to get that information out there. I'm confident after what we did with the DHS report that everything that we're doing is within the standards when it comes to EMS calls. So it's, you know, it's just a lot of numbers to get, and the programs are, at least for me, they're a little bit difficult to figure out.
So I can tell you that I would love a 4-minute response time. That'd be great. There's a whole bunch of geography between here and wherever we're going. There's traffic. There's how fast you can drive safely. There's the fact we have to, you know, put on our fire gear and, you know, all that type of. There's just things that you have to do to get where you have to go. So the only way to get to those type of response time is to add a whole bunch more staffing and a whole bunch more stations. So it's not feasible. In rural America and our response times, and when we get the confidence in the numbers, the confidence in the numbers is strictly the filtering. I'm confident that our folks are doing good work, that when the bell rings and they need to come rescue you or they have to save your life or change the smoke detector in your battery and your smoke detector, that you're getting great response with highly qualified people, and that is, we can't argue that part. How we can get there faster is what Chief Coyle talked about. Once we get done and figure this out, then what other things are in there in the fire station? We have the fire stations, and the designs of the fire station is a perfect example. I got bedrooms all the way up here in the far back corner of this station. I got some that we've built into closets down here. I can go to Station 3, and they're the furthest from the bay possible. So versus Station 6 that has them right off the apparatus floor. Station 3 or Station 4, same way. So there's design of the building compared to where we are in national standards. So we can go on for hours and talk about this. As I asked last month, give us some time. Know that we're doing a good job on the street. The numbers are what the numbers are spitting out of the machine right now, but we're working hard to make sure that we're going to give you the right numbers. So it is what it is right now. Everyone that got those calls and responses back in all the months before that you saw, highly qualified, very happy customers that got good response. But when we filter and cipher through some of the stuff and realize that, hey, this checkbox changes here or whatever, staff has spent a lot of time trying to get through this, and I'd love to hire a statistician if you'd like to authorize me one of those or something, a data analysis person. I'm happy to bring on one of those, and that's all they could do all day long, and I would be much more comfortable in these numbers and get us there faster. In the meantime, we're going to continue to work day in and day out to make sure we do our best job possible, work as fast as we can, and assure that our folks are doing the right things right. And while the numbers say what they are, we can have a discussion about that all day long, and it's not a matter of anyone not being we're being transparent, and we could get done, figure this all out, and the numbers could move to a different place. The end result is what Chief Cole said. We want to find the information out, have confidence in, so we can make any improvements we can, where we can, or identify where we have these potentials. And the fixes are things like different fire stations that have different flows to get people out, or whatever they are. And then you as a board decide those things. Well, that's a pretty expensive thing to shave off what could be 17 seconds. Or maybe it's not 17, maybe it's a minute and 10 seconds. Then that might be amortizing. And so those are the things that we talk about, what all this data means. So probably way deeper than you wanted to go, but you asked the question, and
I asked the question, and I appreciate the answers.
Thank you, Chief.
going on, incident by response to stations are just what they are. You see them there. That looks about the same every month. Year to date, calls by time of date. Again, the distribution looks pretty normal. Community risk management, we do not have the updated data in there, as it'll be back in next month's report, so apologize for that not getting in there. Grant reports, just want to be excited to tell you that the Rotary Club actually approved a grant as well, so we received a $1,250 grant for car seats, as well as we received a $28,588 grant from Firehouse Subs. So we're looking through that to get high visibility jackets for safety of our folks on scenes and incidents. And so hard work by one of our firefighters who wrote that grant, and we've been awarded that grant. So almost $30,000 worth of grants for items the fire district, and saving the taxpayers those costs and enhancing our abilities to provide service to our community. Training information is as reported there. Most of note is probably there's actually one firefighter not on that list. The first firefighter isn't on the new people list, but Mark, Sandy, and Joe have completed a 3-week orientation. Sandy was here today. You may have saw him. All folks are on shift and doing well and getting acclimated to all the things they have to do and working hard on their task books. Fire Marshal John Davis and Rick Evans attended was it a 6-day class on plans review for sprinkler systems in Kingman, and came back with a lot of great information there, and a couple other great things like some helicopter rescue training and some technical rescue training stuff that we did. You see some of the donations which we received, and then the training hours as identified. You'll see the thank you letters that are there. Mr. John Davis and Rick Evans both work in our fire community risk management. Both got really nice letters from the Verde Valley School. They actually went out, talked to their board of directors, and talked about a plan for Verde Valley School to deal with some of the fire and code requirement issues that they can begin to work on over at their place. And so they had a lot of great feedback by their board. We actually got a call from one of their board members after as well, saying, hey, thanks for coming out and providing that detailed time with us, and meant a lot to them to make their school a safe place for their students to go to school and live, actually. Nice thank you from one of our business owners in the town who needed our assistance. So we thank him for sharing the kind words for our folks. And then you certainly see a thank you or two there from some other folks. And I thought one was interesting on here. I'm just going to find it here real quick. John King was just mentioned by someone that we took care of his wife, and made a mention of John King just being a great person taking care of him. It's just kind of a testament to his character. And he does great work in that EMS, well, in everything, but his EMS world, he does really good. Of note is the state forester sending us a letter regarding Jesse Cave. The state had some significant backlog in some of their items that they needed to be addressed, and so Jesse Cave used to work for them. He used to be a dispatcher for them, and asked if we could detail him out and assist with a significant project at the state foresters. And so everything was covered for him for the time he was gone, and reimbursed by the DFFM, and more important, that's very important. But his work and his ethics, his work ethic and his skill set, he came in way under budget what they expected and way under time, and the state forester and some of the folks that he reported to just could not say enough about how wonderful Jesse Cave was and how much work he did. And so again, it's just a testament to who we are as an organization and what we do for hiring the best of the best. That's all I can tell you. Lastly, on my report, any questions on my report as it's presented? I got a couple other items on my list. If you have nothing,
Nope.
Just want to recognize a few folks. So, 20 years of service, we have Captain Dave Guth. 15 years of service is Captain Casey Carr and Sean Foster. Sean Foster happens to be the one that wrote that grant for the high visibility jackets. 10-year would be Engineer Andrew Johnson and firefighter Lars Romig, who have celebrated 10 years this year. And we also are celebrating the retirement of Dave Guth and Engineer Steve Van Riper sometime this month as well. So exciting times for people who have earned that milestone in their career and get to ride off into the sunset and enjoy retirement, as some of you folks may know.
Here we are.
And so very, very proud of our folks who work and meet those milestones, and certainly those who earn the opportunity to retire. It's pretty exciting stuff for us to see the turnover of people and hiring the new folks and things like that. So we actually have 2 more people that'll be starting the fire district on August 6th to take place for the 2 retirements that we had. So you'll see 2 people getting sworn in as firefighters in August at the board meeting. And again, that's for vacancies that are created by retirements. So with that, that is my report as presented.
Okay, thank you very much. Next item on the agenda is the discussion presentation of cardiac arrest data for fiscal year 2018.
I'm going to turn this over to Assistant Division Chief Mazulis, as he's our EMS officer.
It's kind of stealing thunder from the purchase order request for, they're kind of mixed together, but so for those of you that were on the board, a couple years ago, we purchased new cardiac monitors. There was the Zoll X series defibrillator monitor, cardiac monitor, and one of the big pushes with that was to modernize our equipment, and with modernizing our equipment, it allowed us to do a lot more pooling of data and increase the effectiveness of our crews. For 2017, our first year of pulling full data, we had 23 dispatched cardiac arrests. Now that doesn't include folks that were had deceased. You know, that a lot of times through the call takers, they'll decide that, you know, that, so this is purely people that was a witnessed cardiac arrest or a short duration downtime prior to 911 response. Of those, we had 7 return of spontaneous circulations, and what that means is from an analysis of somebody who has had a cardiac arrest through CPR and defibrillation, they have a return of a heartbeat. And our ROS percentage is 30%, but more importantly, our 37.5% is our out-of-hospital survival rate. And that means generally with no deficits, they go back to having Thanksgiving dinner or doing whatever it is they were doing. And in a lot of worlds, 37.5% is not a lofty number, but in the cardiac arrest and survival rate world, our numbers are on par with a lot of major metropolitan systems. You know, the variable is in the low 30s to low 40s. So, you know, for a rural organization with long transport times, I'm pretty proud of our folks for the work they do, and we finally have the data to show that. And with that, another measurable that is recognized nationally is compression fraction. And to simplify it, it's the percentage of time on the call that you're doing the proper AHA recommended depth and rate of compressions, which is 100 to 120 repetitions per minute at 2 to 2.4 inches for an adult. And at first, the numbers, you know, our goal is 60%. That far exceeds national numbers, and we're not there yet. We're in the mid-20s. However, we've had some discoveries with the data, and kind of speaking to what Chief Coyle mentioned, data is only as good as how you collect it. And we're still learning the system, but our data is from monitor on to monitor off. And if you have periods of time, for example, they get the patient to the hospital and then take off the equipment, and then they're writing their report, no, I got to shut the monitor off. There's a period of time that didn't have CPR. So we're still learning and working with Zoll to figure out how to extract some pieces and stuff. And with that, though, there's some opportunities we've identified where we can focus our training, which is the big exciting part for me. Is, you know, in our service, we get the CAN training programs for firefighting to emergency medicine to everything else, and with this data, we're able to fine-tune our training to the needs of our employees. And I think that's pretty cool, because, you know, instead of them sitting through a 2-hour lecture on something they're an expert on, you know, we're focusing, hey, our data shows that we suck at this and we're going to do better at it. And I think that's pretty fascinating. So ultimately, most of our cardiac arrests did occur in the village of Oak Creek this past year. And like I said, we have the opportunity in the next coming months to focus our training specific to the shortcomings we've identified in district. So I'm pretty excited about that.
So with that, our Jonathan King, we talked about collecting all that data, analyzing the data, sharing it with our folks. Our goal is to turn that data around quickly for our people, so it's fresh in their mind, what went well, what didn't go well. So many different variables on, you know, trying to get a person out of a house and doing CPR. Some of the numbers that Ed talked about when compression stop. Well, when you're transporting out of a house and have steps to navigate or whatever, or a steep driveway, there's just safety issues, and we have to stop CPR in those cases. There's so many variables that we have to kind of get, and so we're trying to still, again, to develop back to your other question. So, hey, here's the numbers. What are the nuances in this case versus this one? You know, coming out of Jack's Canyon, having an event is quite a bit different, you know, type of environment than coming out of some of the different homes and things like that. Our approach towards pit crew CPR and creating a team, having that engine and ambulance on scene to all have a job to do and get that work done is what makes a difference. And the average in the 30s for return of spontaneous circulation is, to me, is huge. I've said this kind of before meetings eons ago, but I mean, when we don't bring people back, our folks come back and kind of scratch their head. What happened? What didn't go right? How could we have done something better? And I did, you know, 20 years as a medic, or, you know, or an active medic anyway. I didn't see that happen in my career. I saw it in a movie once or twice.
Right, Chief, just what, do you know what the average is? Because I know it's much lower than ours, but what is the...
What average specifically?
For return of heartbeat.
Well, for Ross, you know, big progressive systems, the Seattle area, I think are at 38%. Superstition Fire Medical, their recent data, I said it was in the low 40s, if I'm not mistaken. And that's kind of where it's hovering. There's a couple systems that, again, that's something I'm working on, is everybody reports their data differently. So where you might, we're focusing on walking out of the hospital, return of spontaneous cardiac arrest to return of spontaneous circulation to leaving the hospital deficit free. Some systems track their data on leaving the hospital. Well, they may leave the hospital to a care facility and have some significant deficits, you know, whether it's neurological or health deficits, or they may track their out of hospital survival on the fact that they lived in the hospital for 4 days, and then because of some metabolic issues with kidneys or whatnot secondary to their cardiac event, they passed. And so on the surface, a lot of the data sets look good and to give us an opportunity for improvement, but then when you filter down a lot of that stuff, it's the national data discharged alive for 2017 was 12%.
All right, thank you. So
What was ours out of
30,
the hospital?
37.5.
So I know, and the national in-hospital data, so in the hospital with the full code team responding is about 12 to 15%.
And And like Chief Cajun alluded to with some of our statistics, I mean, we have a small sample set, you know, we average 2.5 cardiac arrest calls per month. But that being said, with some of the new technologies and skills and abilities that are out there, if we can make a difference in one a year, I think it's a big deal.
It's impressive. That's all I can tell you. It's impressive. I'd be proud of that. We're working on an article on this as well, and the data, the health world continues, and you maybe will help with this topic. They continue to improve some of those, getting them to be streamlined. That we're all talking the same thing, because it sometimes is, as Ed alluded to, and I could tell you some other numbers. You know, he started breathing once on his own. There you go. Check the box. We had, you know, ROSC. You know, that was just an agonal breath. That wasn't, you know, that's not sustained breathing. So there's just all those variances, and we want to make sure we're reporting it right, and we're continuing. Ed works at the state level to make sure we're engaging our state partnerships and with DHS and other fire districts, and so we're all continuing to push for great emergency medical services.
Well,
And
you know, I didn't want to interrupt you, but
No.
I just know that our stats are really impressive, and that was the point I wanted to get across.
No, thank you.
That we're doing really well in this department.
Cool. So with that, oh, God.
A little off subject, but on subject. Your experience, Sedona Fire District's experience with infant CPR. Average age 57 years of age in the communities, what have you. So there's not a lot of infants around, perhaps, or a few. And infants are resilient. And when things go wrong with a SIDS, for example, and others, what have you. What's been your experience there, and have you collected data on that?
You know, for this time period measured for this data, we had one pediatric cardiac arrest for the year, and
That's a good thing.
yeah. But that also being said, you know, we don't have a lot of pediatric emergencies, so.
So with that, this was an information survey. Any other questions for Ed? We just want to share that information with you. No actions needed, but it ties into the next item, which we were going to put in the consent agenda, but because it tied in so nicely with the stats we just got, we thought we'd break it out and share this next request. So
Before we move on, Ed, what is a projected date that you guys can get all of this data collection on the same page, right? Do you have that? That's a target date down the road somewhere, and which is the main problem here?
You speaking organizationally?
Yeah.
We're taking, speak out of turn, we're taking a lot of steps towards that. We're working on some software. A lot of it boils down to software, and Ford and Chevy don't make interchangeable products because they want to sell theirs. And with these software programs over the years, as we progress as an organization, we've adopted different software packages, and a lot of our work this year and as part of our strategic plan is to align a lot of those software packages so that they better talk to each other. Because at the end of the day, it's not as simple as we'll have this one talk to this one, because both vendors then want a bridge built, and that costs more money, and then there's the corrupted data that comes across, and so on and so forth. So ideally, this fiscal year, in my mind, we're going to make some great steps towards, for lack of a better term, simplifying how we move and collect data, so it'll be much easier to get rid of these little errant, strange things that cause for these problems, and I'm excited about it.
So with that, Mr. Chairman Soto, so there's it's the data in, the data out. So firefighters, paramedics write that report, check this box, don't check. There's a lot of things we do to help track these things, and we're always constantly figuring out, hey, wow, if we put a checkbox here, or if this thing was added to the list of whatever. And so it's a evolving, living document, really, that it gets changed frequently to meet our needs, so we can pull the data out. And then once Ed gets that data, hey, that'd be really cool if I could learn this. And then we say, well, let's add this button then. And so it constantly is evolving. And so we'll never probably ever be done, because we'll always be learning something new.
But specific to EMS, the national standard is NEMSIS. It's a national reporting standard for, and our current emergency patient care report package isn't NEMSIS compliant. And we're working towards that, because then with that, the data we collect will match the data that's required with our healthcare partners. And specific, Mr. Soto, to EMS data, it's cleaner and everything naturally. And that's the purpose for NEMSIS, is to clean up the data and make it usable, and so that we can get national outcomes and speak the same language.
Great, thank you. Any comments on that? Okay, well, that does lead us into our next item on the agenda, which is D3, purchase order 1778 to Zoll Medical Corporation for $14,220 for an auto pulse system.
Okay, as we spoke about the percentages of compression fraction, which when we're talking cardiac arrest, early intervention with CPR and early defibrillation by far increase the chance of having return of spontaneous circulation. And so that's why we made the efforts with, as we've spoken in past meetings, about Pulse Point and working really hard, as an AHA training center to train our public on CPR, because citizen CPR is a big key in the chain of survival. In addition to that is defibrillation. Well, we have some of the best cardiac monitors on the market, and we have a large AED pad program, the public access defibrillators. And so we're crossing those off our list. Now, working with some of the data on our cruise compression fraction, our CPR quality goes down tremendously during transport, which is generally the longest part of our cardiac resuscitation process, because we'll get on scene, determine what's going on, initiate resuscitation, and then load them in the ambulance to transport them to the hospital. Well, in most parts of town, it's about 30-minute transport, and that's when we're seeing our data fall off. Well, that's not unique to Sedona Fire. Across the nation, transport is when CPR is impacted. And in fact, Josh Wells, Captain Wells, and I worked last year with Dr. Bobrow, one of the state docs working on CPR down in Phoenix on CPR University, and we tested the quality of CPR on gurney mattresses and on things like that, and found the data to be all over the place. So my point is we recognized internally that we now know what everybody knows, and that's that CPR decreases, quality decreases during transport. Now, in addition to that, generally CPR in the back of an ambulance requires one of our employees, one of our providers, to be unbelted and standing up or leaning over while having somebody drive them hurriedly to the hospital with a cardiac arrest patient. That's not a good scenario either. So this purchase order is a request for a Zoll auto pulse system, and what it is it's essentially a hard board with some electronic circuitry, and then it's got a band, and it's battery powered. And what you do is you slide it under the patient, you strap the band on, and then it performs the compressions for you. And the intent of this purchase is to place it on the battalion chief's rig, because most of our cardiac arrest calls, the battalion chief's able to arrive on scene within a 20-minute time frame, and that's kind of the high end. And with that, that's generally, if we have a return of spontaneous circulation, that's when our crews are packaging for a transport. And I believe, the cost benefit, ultimately have them all over the district would be great, but because of the cost of the device, I'm proposing we purchase one for our battalion rig, who is dispatched to all cardiac arrests, and then we follow up with analyzing the data and see how well it improves our cardiac arrest performance. And that's the gist of this purchase order.
If you recall, as I spoke, as we're going down that driveway, as we're going, navigating downstairs or whatever, and the compressions stop or are unsafe or whatever, that auto pulse will be continuing CPR during that time. So I illustrated some examples of where that comes into play. I used this in Illinois. It was absolutely beautiful, and I would suspect that when we're done, the data will show that putting them on the ambulances will be the most beneficial. The sooner we can get them on, free up crews, and it's doing proper CPR by its sensors. It knows how big and how tight to squeeze based upon what it needs to do. And it's a great tool. So excited that we're at the point that we can get it. The Zoll talks to the Zoll monitors. All that technology linking together. There was a method to the madness back when we bought the Zolls and stuff like that. So it's all good. If there's any other questions.
Yes, Chief, so what you're saying is that there is a battalion chief as part of the assignment to every cardiac arrest?
That
Yes.
is correct.
It's labeled in the dispatch, in the CAD system as an echo response,
Okay.
which pulls two engines, fire, an ambulance, the duty chief, and then it alerts all, it opens up the boxes, if you will, it alert all closest resources in the event there's an ambulance returning from a call or something of that nature.
Okay. And I will confirm the fact that cardiac arrest compressions in the back of an ambulance while en route to a hospital is about as unsafe for that unbuckled, unsecured firefighter or other personnel as they jostle around in the back of that ambulance en route to a hospital. So if we can eliminate that, potentially injuries for our firefighters by having this piece of equipment, then it's well worth its weight in gold.
Well, you consider going down the road, the dangers of all that, but also you have someone in cardiac arrest, which is at the most critical time. So everything's elevated. The driving, trying to get there, everyone's just, even as professional as you are, that's, you're trying to save a life. And so it compounds the potential for injuries.
Let me ask you this, where you have a cardiac arrest in a remote area, I'm sure that with this particular device, that you dial in chest compressions depending on the depth of the chest.
You set it to an adult patient, and correct. And as you can see on the attached quote from Zoll, they so nicely included the carry-all bag for no cost, and so it is transportable into our backcountry.
Let me ask you this then, is there any development of policy anticipating that you will receive one on putting on an aircraft? So the patient goes by aircraft to a hospital that is more difficult to retrieve the device from.
I'd assume they already have.
Yeah, generally
Guardian
speak,
probably already
They have
has.
a thumper, I think, because they use
Yeah.
a different device, I think.
and
So they have thumper as
Yeah,
opposed to.
they have a device like this already.
yeah, they have a thumper, and quite honestly, I've looked at the data, and generally speaking, with VVMC being a cardiac cath lab, I'm not going to say all the time, but a majority of our cardiac arrest calls, we're not going to get them on a helicopter quicker than we're going to get them to the hospital. And so,
and in many cases, they will take a patient in cardiac arrest
Yeah.
either as well as an unstable patient. I mean, in cardiac arrest, they always take unstable patients. That's why they're picking them critical patients. But cardiac arrest, a lot of times they'll ground transport with us. It's just you can't. One person on that helicopter can't effectively do CPR, and everything else they got to do. They need a team, so they'll often ride with us if they code, and go with us in the ambulance. So.
Thank you.
Well, this looks like an extremely worthwhile expenditure for our citizens as well as our firefighters. I'll go ahead and move to approve purchase order 1178 to Zoll Medical Corporation for $15,442.94 to purchase an auto pulse system.
Second.
Mr. Chair, the record should reflect that motion includes a principal of $14,220 plus tax.
Yes. So
Okay.
moved.
So as to make it consistent with the agenda.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you. I see the discrepancy there. Okay, so let the record reflect that. Thank you. Do we have a second? Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the motion passes.
thank you, and you will be getting data via John King via me shortly.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair, we'd request that we pull item number 4 off the agenda for now. We're going to table it, and we'll be bringing it back in the next month or two or so.
Okay, so item number 4 will be tabled for this month.
Correct. We'll bring it back when we're ready.
Okay, thank you. Item number 5, discussion, possible action, review and approval of a purchase order 11314 for $41,500 to Skaggs Uniforms for Sedona Fire District uniform apparel.
So Board, this is our annual allotment towards our uniform purchase. It's a budgeted item, and it's what we purchase every year for our folks. If you've got questions, Chief Coyle certainly has the ability to provide a much deeper report, but if you don't care to hear about pants and uniform shirts and
Well, actually,
Just
I
the
do.
like.
I do have a question for you. In light of what's happened out on the West Coast in Long Beach, are our members fitted for vests, bulletproof vests?
Jordan just left, but actually we have 4 vests that are en route to us right now as demos to look for the sizing, and we've been working for over the past several months to identify vests that will fit the different dimensions of the firefighters, are quick to don and doff, and are provide the level 3 plus threat protection that we desired, but are still have a longer life expectancy. And so right now it looks like it's probably gonna be ceramic plates and carriers that are with these adjustable carriers actually have a drag strap on them as well, and then they can keep the kits for how they would their treatment kits and everything with their quick clot and their windmill tourniquets and everything right there, and so it will align with our training and with the new approach to having that rescue task force.
So I guess that, so those are in consideration and being looked at?
Yes, sir.
And, okay.
That's
Very-
correct. Matter of fact,
very
they are
active.
en route here at this time.
Great.
4 sets of them.
very, very active discussion, and it's all about creating a policy for active shooter hostile environment response is what ASHER is the acronym, and it's a really big deal for everyone in the fire service, and we're working very hard to dial in our protocol and everything, but this purchase order does not include any of that. We'll be back to you with a future consideration for that as appropriate. So
All
this
right.
is strict our uniforms.
Okay, thank you. Well then, with that said, motion to approve. Anybody would like to make that?
Yeah, I'll move to approve purchase order 11314 in the amount of $41,500 to Skaggs Uniforms for the purpose of providing uniform apparel and services to the Sedona Fire District for fiscal year 2019.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, Gene, thank you. Any further discussion? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, that motion passes. Okay. Next item up is the discussion possible action to review and approval of purchase order 11289 for, nope, did I miss one?
No, that's table.
Oh, that one's tabled, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, we are at
Board member item
E1, that's correct, right?
Correct.
Discussion upcoming possible fire board election in November and related matters.
Board, I just want to remind you and the public that we do have a potential for an election here. We have 3 open seats on the board for the November election, and anyone interested can come to the fire station and get a packet. They are due back to the county with the appropriate number of signatures and such by August 9th, 8th? 9th. So if anyone's interested, please consider that option, and just wanted to take this time to remind everybody.
Okay, thank you. Last item on the agenda is the fire marshal's safety message.
Well, we're finally out of fire season. That's a good thing. But just as quickly, we are into monsoon season and localized flooding. And low water crossings are a definite hazard this time of year. And I'm sure we're all familiar with the Turnaround, Don't Drown campaign. If you're approaching a road in your car and, gee, it just looks like a couple inches of water running across that road, I think I can make it. Don't do it. Please don't do it. It only takes a few inches of swift water to force a car off the road. Those tires, they're big, they're flat, they collect a lot of water pressure, and it'll push you right off the road. So please remember, turn around, don't drown. That's it.
Thank you. Well, with that said, I'd like to thank all the staff for all their hard work this past month in putting this meeting together. With that said, this meeting is adjourned.